With dedicated engineers in design, materials, quality, and supply chain, EBCO serves as an extension of your company in supporting your application. Our team can assist with an existing issue or a new design and produce a customized solution. Starting from a concept stage, EBCO provides complementary analysis and modeling to understand your specific needs. From there, we can provide rapid prototype samples to ensure you're getting a product that exceeds your expectations. When it comes to both sample and production quality, you can rest easy knowing that every part's physical and material properties are inspected using our state-of-the-art equipment.
The disproportionate impact of
more than half of Black business owners
and disproportionate.
Somehow we always find a way to rise.
To the blueprint builders, to the backbones of every block, for the curators of the culture, and for generations to follow. You might fall, but never fail. Keep rising, keep rising, keep rising. Apply for a business, marketing, and tech makeovers on us.
As Trane Technologies, we believe changing our industry will change the world. So we put a stake in the ground with some historic commitments, including a pledge to reduce our customers' carbon emissions by 1 gigaton by the year 2030. What we're doing unifies everything that's important: the sustainability of our business, the power of our people, and the future of our planet. As we look to 2030 and even beyond, Trane Technologies will challenge what's possible for the world and enhance billions of lives. There will be some who say we can't, but we don't believe in impossible. Let's rise to the challenge. Together, we are Trane Technologies.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Donna Ennis, Director of Diversity Engagement and Program Development at the Georgia Tech Enterprise Innovation Institute, and I also serve as Director of the Atlanta MBDA Advanced Manufacturing and Business Centers. On behalf of the Minority Business Development Agency, or MBDA, the MBDA Center Network, Georgia Tech, our sponsors, stakeholders, and partners, I welcome you to the 5th National MBE Manufacturers Summit and thank each of you for being here with us today. For those of you who attended our Summit Eve gathering yesterday, we hope you met new people and reconnected with others. We also want to thank Joe Anderson for his insightful, powerful keynote. We are so pleased to have all of you join us today for information, insights, and inspiration. Through our keynotes, poster walk, competition, technology showcase, manufacturing technology tour, and more, we will be focused over the next 2 days on technologies that are driving the future of manufacturing right now. The National MBE Manufacturers Summit has become the annual gathering of the MBE manufacturing community to come together to discuss new manufacturing trends, meet one-on-one with corporations and original equipment manufacturers, or OEMs, and network among each other for new business opportunities and partnerships. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors for their vision and support. First, I'd like to recognize our sponsors, the founding sponsor, Georgia Manufacturing Extension Partnership, Our center level sponsors are Comcast, EBCO, and Train Technologies. Our bridge builders are Grady Healthcare Systems and the Home Depot. And our summit level are BMW Group and Siemens. Thank you again for investing in this initiative. We thank our 4 supporting partners who helped us develop content and promote the summit: our Georgia Tech Manufacturing Institute, the Healthcare Supplier Diversity Alliance, Next Generation Manufacturing, and Starbucks. Putting this summit together was a new and different experience for me and my staff. From programming to marketing to production, we had a top-notch team that came together to make this summit a reality. I'd like to extend a special thank you to these companies and individuals who guided us and held our hands throughout this process. ISOM Global Strategies, Tawan, Alan, Adrian, Garrett, and all the others, you really rock. To Yana and her team at Control Video, thank you so much for working with our team of neophytes. And for Durga of EventDex, we could not have done this without you. The Summit's virtual platform is brought to you by EventDex, a company that has been with us from the beginning. I'd also like to recognize our advisory council, who continue to provide guidance and support. Louise Connell of BMW, Bill Bernardo with EBCO, Jackie LaTroy of Train Technologies, and Adam Walker of Summit Packaging. Again, thank you for your help and continued support. Our staff has really grown this past year, and to all of you, Lauren Roberts, Brandy Nagel, Doreen Kincaid, Anita Davis, Jennifer Pasley, Anthony Jackson, Jamarcus King, Sam Knapp, Aisha Jones, and Dr. Billy D. Brown. Thank you for your time, commitment, and energy. The theme of the summit this year is Future Forward, disrupting in an age of uncertainty. And my question to you today is, how are you disrupting in this time of uncertainty? For the next 2 days, you will experience keynotes, the poster walk competition, a technology showcase, a special technology tour, and more. We will discuss the latest trends in key industries and learn about cybersecurity and the industrial Internet of Things. Future Forward is about helping you understand where manufacturing is heading and to offer you the resources and expertise to get you there. And by the way, our special feature this year is our Summit Bags. To support our minority businesses, we filled the bags this year with products made in America by MBEs. We hope you enjoy the bag and the products. During the summit, please connect with each other in a meaningful way with the goal of making connections that will help you source your products or services. Meeting in the virtual world is not the same as meeting in person and breaking bread together, but you will have and find many opportunities to start conversations, ask questions, learn together, and begin new professional relationships. Before we get started, we have a special message from the president of Georgia Tech, Dr. Angel Cabrera. Thank you.
Welcome to the 5th Annual National MBE Manufacturers Summit. Georgia Tech's Enterprise Innovation Institute established this one-of-a-kind conference in 2016 as part of our commitment to assist minority and small business communities. Now, 5 years running, the summit has brought together more than 700 minority business enterprise manufacturers from across the US and Canada and helped them connect with Georgia Tech and our partners in the private sector. This year's theme is Future Forward, disrupting in a time of uncertainty. For the past year, global markets and supply chains have undergone substantial disruptions. On one hand, global crises like the COVID-19 pandemic, social unrest, natural disasters, and climate change have forced billions of people across the globe to redefine their daily lives. On the other, new technologies, including breakthroughs with artificial intelligence, are pushing entrepreneurs to rethink and restructure how they do business. That's why this year's summit will focus on how these paradigm shifts will affect innovation and entrepreneurship and how you can prepare for the future. We have sessions on the future of healthcare, food and beverage, retail, transportation, mobility, cybersecurity, and more. In Georgia Tech's new strategic plan, we commit ourselves to developing leaders who advance technology and improve the human condition, to becoming a global engine of innovation, entrepreneurship, and opportunity that expands access and leads by example. Those priorities start with serving and connecting others to our resources and expertise in science, technology, and manufacturing. That's why we host this summit, and I'm so happy you're here. I send my thanks to the Atlanta MBDA Advanced Manufacturing Center, the Enterprise Innovation Institute, and the Manufacturing Institute, who all partner together each year to make this important summit a reality. And thanks to all of you, the attendees of this year's summit, for joining us in this virtual format so these critical touchpoints, connections, and discussions can continue. We're sorry we can't be together in person this year, but we look forward to seeing you next year in Atlanta. Enjoy the sessions and your time together. Thank you and take care.
Thank you, President Cabrera, for that wonderful message and for the support that you and the leadership team of Georgia Tech have provided to our MBDA centers and our programs over the past 17 years. And to our virtual audience out there, you got a quick look and sneak peek at the Summit bag with products manufactured in the U.S. by MBE manufacturers. I do want to make a correction, however. We do have, in addition to the bag that wasn't presented, eSpin Technologies. Jayesh Doshi, who is one of our clients, provided the masks in the bags. He has masks, and he is a company that's a nanofiber technology, providing filters and PPE equipment. So we will make that correction, and we thank you, eSpin Technologies, for also making your product in America. The Breaking a Mold Award recognizes MBE manufacturers who are distinctive in their industry or have approached the manufacturing of their products in a unique and special way. Let's take a look at the award. We are honored to give this year's award, Breaking the Mold Award, to Yul Parker, owner of the Route 66 International Company. Located in Hackensack, New Jersey, Route 66 International manufactures and distributes 100% premium gold and roasted seaweed. It is the first seaweed manufacturer on the East Coast, providing sushi nori to more than 500 restaurants in over 30 states. Route 66 International seaweed is made with A-grade seaweed from South Korea, using top quality control to ensure satisfaction for all needs. I'd like to thank Roxanne Nielsen of the Manhattan MBDA Business Center for nominating Route 66 International for this award. Through our MBDA network, we serve a plethora of MBE manufacturers that are making products here in America. Thank you, Yul Parker and the Route 66 International team for breaking the mold in manufacturing and bringing us premium grade seaweed products manufactured in New Jersey. As a sushi lover, I'm excited to see your product, and I will ask for it the next time I order sushi. Play the video, please.
I'm very honored to receive this award. I named Route 66 after the pioneer spirit of American Highway. Many people enjoy sushi, but the seed is mainly from China. I wanted to make the best quality seed, freshly roasted from local New Jersey. So I built a seed factory from the ground up about a year ago. It was the first and the only seed factory on the East Coast. I love the title, Breaking the Mold. It means a lot to us. I appreciate this outstanding award and all the support from MBDA. Thank you.
And again, thank you, your Park, for breaking the mold in your manufacturing. As mentioned earlier, and as you'll hear throughout the next couple of days, the theme of this year's summit is Future Forward, disrupting in a time of uncertainty. Our keynote speaker today knows quite a bit about disruption. Ray Pittard is the Chief Transformation Officer at Trane Technologies. In this role, he leads efforts to transform Trane Technologies into efficient, more customer-focused company. Ray has been a member of the Climate Solutions Leadership Team since its creation in 2009. He has held leadership roles in the U.S. and Europe and serves as a board member for the Trane Technologies Foundation, which manages all charitable contributions and partnerships. He has also served on the board of the Ada Jenkins Center, a charitable organization in North Carolina. He holds a BS in mechanical engineering degree from Texas A&M University. Join me as we learn from one of the world's leading manufacturers how the new normal of a post-pandemic world has affected global innovation, business operations, and supply chains, and the emerging trends that we should be aware of. Take it away, Ray.
Thank you, Donna. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm excited to share today a little bit of my thoughts. Hopefully, what we can do today with the kickoff of the conference is to talk about a business leader's perspective around future forward, disrupting in a time of uncertainty. It's such a perfect discussion topic for us for this year's summit. And as we look about this, I'm pleased to be able to share my perspective. I've been a business leader, as Donna shared, for many, many years. Been a president of several different businesses for our company. And clearly, the megatrends and the challenges that are facing all of our companies are right in front of us. And with those come challenges, but also tremendous opportunity. So we'll get started. We'll take about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes to talk through some slides. And then we'll take some question and answers. And I do believe the slides will be available for everyone at the end of the conference. So why don't we get started and go to the next slide. I think it's important to start with just a brief understanding of our company, only in that I'll use it as an example today for a couple different topics around the megatrends. Trane Technologies is a global climate innovator that's about a $13 billion company, 34 manufacturing sites, and about 700 locations around the world, 36,000 employees. And most importantly, to all of you, thousands of partners that are suppliers to our company on a daily basis to help us to be able to serve our customers and be successful. But the reason I wanted to share this as we go to the next slide is to really talk about how our purpose of boldly challenging what's possible for a sustainable world gives us the opportunity to use the megatrends to help our company. If you'd advance to the next slide, please. Our company is based in three different areas. We focus on the commercial HVAC space for air conditioning for buildings and factories and industrial applications, residential for home, and then transport refrigeration with Thermo King, the brands that we go to market with. What's important about this, though, is that all of the businesses take advantage of the sustainability challenges in the world to drive incremental value to customers and help our customers to be more successful. And it's a nice way of using the mega trends that are in front of us to be able to drive the growth and success of our company. Since last year, when we created Train Technologies, which was formerly a part of Ingersoll Rand and is now a new company, Train Technologies, as of March of last year, we've seen our market capitalization go from roughly $22 billion to today close to $43 billion, all in the course of 12 months. I think much of that has to do with the transformation as well as the alignment to the megatrends that give us a great tailwind. We go to the next slide, we'll dive into our agenda for today. First is we'll talk a little bit about the megatrends that are affecting all of our companies, the imperatives, the disruption, and the critical importance of agility. We'll then talk a little bit about talent and the importance of having the right leaders for us in our organizations, the skills needed for the workforce of the future, and how we actually do work. We call it the work of the future or future of work. We'll take a few moments to talk a little bit about manufacturing and the state of U.S. manufacturing. Small section here, but just simply to get grounded on where the world is today in terms of our competitiveness. And then finally talk forward about what the transformation can do to all of our companies to create value and help us to be successful for the future. So let's get started. Let's look at the next slide. A group of CEOs were asked what they saw as the biggest enterprise risks in front of them. And what you see in front of from the World Economic Forum is a report that shows in 2021 what those are. And it's no surprise, amongst the highest ones are clearly these external risks associated with the pandemic, with impacts around climate and digital implications, particularly around cyber and digital related topics. And you could look at this and you could go, boy, these are overwhelming and these are concerning, which they should be on the tops of our minds as leaders. But also there's an opportunity, we call it nexus, or the nexus thinking. And what I mean by that is the ability to look at this and see opportunity and see how can you line up your company to be able to take advantage of some of these big trends. If we go to the next slide, we'll begin to talk further about a little deeper dive on some other areas. The first area beyond this that I'd like to talk a little bit about is the megatrend associated with sustainability. I think this is one that we all understand. We clearly know there's climate change taking place. I think everyone sees the implications on our weather, both the bigger storms and the challenges we see around climate change associated with global warming. But there's also other trends going with urbanization. And if you look at where people are today and where they'll be in the future, more and more people will be in urban environments. And you may say, well, this seems relatively common sense. But the reality is that this means that supply chains and business opportunities will change and that there's implications around this urbanization. At the same time, there's resource scarcity. There's the ability to have to reuse resources and find new ways to deal with this resource scarcity becomes more and more important for all of our companies. And then last but not least, demographics continue to change. We have a new workforce, particularly today's day and age. We have a new generation coming in that has a different set of what values and what they place as important coming into both the workforce as well as also our customer base. So we have to consider this. There's some other megatrends that are also important. One is indoor air quality, triggered by the aspect of the pandemic that we've been going through, where people are now concerned about, okay, what kind of environment will they come back to or will they maintain going forward? And this digital connectedness that all of you know so well from prior discussions around the Internet of Things and Manufacturing 4.0. The implications of this, though, are that clearly there's a global challenge and we have an opportunity. But this also means new regulations will be coming. So as you think about your business, you'll see new regulations coming around emissions, around environmental regulations that go with that, around taxes, and around changes in the dynamics within your own businesses. I know we're certainly seeing that. There'll be new markets, though, that are created by this. If you look at the appendix later on, after you have a time to read the slides later, you'll see that there's a decarbonization opportunity, an industry that didn't really exist, close to $3 to $4 trillion by 2030, as expected to be with the decarbonization or the greening out of our energy markets, for example. So with this set of implications also comes a great opportunity in front of all of us. I would say also, as leaders, we have to also be conscious of the fact that there's more and more emphasis on ESGs, or environmental, social, and governance within our companies. I know our company, this is front and center for us. Our shareholders and analysts in the marketplace constantly are looking to see that we can do more than just make a dollar. We also have to be a company that gives back to the communities we work in, that we're conscious of doing things the right way from a governance perspective, that we're thinking about the environment, and we're becoming a greener environment-based company where we try to strive to become net neutral to the global environment. All of these factors begin to weigh that it's not just about making money, but it's also from an ESG perspective. You may say, well, my company is a private company. Maybe I don't have to worry so much about this, but understand that your customers have more and more emphasis on this as well. So if it's important to them, it'll become important to you. And if it's important to you already, you know what I'm talking about. Now let's go to another set of megatrends. Let's talk a little bit about digital. If you go to the next slide, please. This is the 3 to 4 trillion that I talked about. If you go to the next slide. From an industry perspective, one of the digital accelerations that is clearly taking place is around the Internet of Things and additive manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, and the customer experience, and of course, cyber that goes with that. Clearly, with COVID and the pandemic that we've gone through, this has accelerated at a rate that I don't think any of us anticipated. Clearly, the ability to go from working in factories and being at home to being at home and running companies from a remote perspective has really accelerated this transformation around the digital side. But at the same time, the technology is also becoming more and more cost effective. In the old days, people would think about automation and they would think about robotics and automation and $1 million price tags for those types of things, like a big automotive plant might see, for example. But today, you can implement automation and you can put in robotics for a fraction of those costs. Your own people can do the programming, and the flexibility for reuse and new applications over time is tremendous. At the end of the day, the business case for this transformation is clearly here, and we're seeing great returns. Clearly, we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But clearly, it's also important for us to think about the customer digitization that's taking place. And if you read the news today, we all know about the cyber risk. If you just look at the fast lines that we see today, there's people dealing with fuel disruption simply because of cyber threat that took place. That's as recent as in the news today. Now let's move to the next megatrend. Let's talk a little bit about growth. Really, an imperative for all of us and for all companies is to continue to grow and drive innovation and do this in an agile or speedy way. Speed and innovation really becomes the new imperative. It's not just about growing, but it's how you can outgrow the competition and how agility really becomes a critical factor. To do this, to be able to capture market share, we have to find new ways to innovate. We have to find new sources of growth, and we have to find ways to be agile and adaptive to market opportunities. I'd share a simple example with you where we've had a success in our company this past year with the pandemic. One of the product lines that we make is a refrigeration system for sushi, interestingly enough, and it requires ultra low temperature, minus 70 degrees to minus 80 degrees Celsius temperature to refrigerate tuna, to move tuna around the world. With the pandemic, there was a need to refrigerate vaccines and store and transport those vaccines. And uniquely enough, the Pfizer vaccine required a minus 70 to minus 80 degrees Celsius temperature to maintain stability. Our teams were able to work to use agile innovation and technology to be able to quickly adapt that product from a super freezer for sushi to a vaccine-based storage system that today we take to the market to help deliver vaccines for all of us around the world to get vaccinated. That's the kind of example that I would talk about. But what's interesting about that is, in the future, that speed and agility is going to be something that's going to be needed for all development and all applications as we go forward. Additionally to that, we have to think about the margin enhancement to be able to drive this innovation, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's go now to the next slide and begin to think about how we're going to fund this level of innovation. One of the critical things that clearly we have to do is we have to find ways to continue to transform the supply chain. And the mega trends that are taking place here are pretty remarkable. I think we're seeing them first and foremost. In the past, people were thinking about how they could make a supply chain more efficient and more productive. That's still clearly an imperative that we have to think about. But additionally, the mega trend now that we're all faced with or that we're seeing is clearly the stability and the need for resilience. The ability to, with a smaller world, to find ways to do logistics in a better way, to find ways to think about moving from moving product across the globe to being in region for region. I think our example of the video and the award we saw a moment ago is about how we do something in our country for our country as an example, to be able to have a supply chain that's closer and ultimately be able to think of a value stream that brings product or materials, process, and information all together as a powerful way to have a connected supply chain. Additionally, we have to think about talent, which I'll talk a little bit in a moment. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, taxes and regulations are going to continue to evolve, and we're going to have to continue to deal with those. These are all trends that are in front of us that we're going to have to be prepared for as leaders of companies. Now let's take a little deeper dive on talent. From a leadership talent perspective, talent makes all the difference. And I think there is nothing new to that. We all know this, but there's some interesting statistics you see on the slide that the Development Dimensions International organization put together. And I would point out to the right, over half of all CEOs say that developing the next generation of leaders is their top challenge. And at the same time, only about 1 in 5 CEOs actually feels prepared for this transformation of their leadership, particularly around the digital aspect. In addition, an even bigger challenge as a result of the pandemic is that 86% of our top high potential talent in companies is at risk of burnout. So you think about that, we're faced with a pretty daunting task, and we have to figure out as leaders, how do we get our leadership teams ready for the future? Let's take a little deeper look at this as we go to the next slide and how we're going to help this. First of all, what you see on this chart is that there's a really importance around urgency versus critical skills gaps. Communications, the interaction with employees, the ability to be an empathetic leader, and working and leading in a hybrid environment or a remote environment all becomes a really important set of skill sets that you can pull out of this chart. This makes it more challenging for leaders to develop other leaders. This makes it more challenging for us to think about how we can get our leaders ready. And at the same time, the next generation isn't prepared for this. As you see on the right, communicating and interacting with others, leadership, because of the digital age we're in and the social media network age that we're in, is not as prepared as the prior generation. And demonstrating empathy and emotional intelligence, the survey of leaders, of HR leaders, has shared that they feel their leaders are not as prepared from an empathy or emotional intelligence perspective as they should be. So as we think forward about this, it becomes really important for us to think about how do we create development plans? How do we give clarity to these leaders? How do we coach these leaders? And how do we ultimately think about this and get systematic about building that talent? I would encourage you to challenge your leadership teams and your HR executives to really build these robust plans. If you look into the appendix later, you'll see some questions that are great questions to ask the teams as they build out these plans. But let's think a little bit broader. Let's talk about the workforce. If we go to the next slide, we'll take a look at what the workforce, not just the leadership, is faced with. Next slide. If we look at the changes that our skills are needed, what we see here is that the study shows on this page that the future skills are needed, and they're different than what they used to be. In the past, it was important for people to have skills around general cooperation or basic processing. That's reduced in importance. As we go post-COVID, what's become important now is social and emotional skills, interpersonal skills, empathy skills, leadership skills, as I mentioned. That's gone up by 21%. In terms of what people are giving us feedback on through the McKinsey Global Institute survey. And as technology skills become more and more important, which is obvious with the advent of more and more technology coming into the workspace. As you think about these major changes, you have to think about the workforce and ask yourself, do you have the workforce prepared to address the future? Do you have the skills in place, or do you have a plan in place to get those skills and help people be successful to be able to do their jobs? The talent environment is really challenging, and it's only going to get more challenging, particularly with COVID. As we go to the next slide, we'll take a deeper look. The future of work is a term that we use in our company. I'm sure others do as well, which is also something that's come out of the advent of the pandemic. Clearly, the idea of working in an office every day, 5 days a week, isn't the same as what it used to be pre-pandemic. There's an interesting dichotomy, though, if you look at the statistics that have come forward. The majority of CEOs actually want to go back to an in-person environment, about 2/3. But at the same time, most employees in the workforce want to have the flexibility to work remote. Literally, 3 out of 4 employees wants this capacity to work remote or work at home. Now, think about that. CEOs want everybody back. The employees don't want to come back in the same way that they did before. Something has to change. Clearly, a hybrid model for the work of the future is inevitable and is going to happen. Talent implications in this are really material. If you think about this trend, what does this mean? Well, first of all, it means there's a great opportunity to go find talent the best anywhere. If you need a material scientist, or you need an engineer, or you need a certain skill set, you can find that skill anywhere in the world and they can work remote for your company. But at the same time, it also means that people will be looking to attract your talent because those same people can work for their company and they may be in faraway places. So you can have retention challenges within your company as well. So clearly, thinking about how you address the future of work and how you think about that becomes a really critical part of this talent forward as we go forward. You go to the next slide. Now we'll talk about the. Go next slide. Let's talk a little bit about the state of U.S. manufacturing. First and foremost, I want to take a moment here just to talk a little bit about the outsized impact of manufacturing. A lot of people worry that U.S. manufacturing is becoming more of a service economy, and clearly service businesses are growing in the country. But I would tell you that manufacturing is critical to the United States. What you see here, 8% of the workforce is in manufacturing, but 11% of the GDP comes from that. And literally, it's a disproportionate contribution to things like patents, R&D spend, and most importantly, our exports. So it's really important, and I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. So if you wonder if you're in the right space, I would clearly say if you're in the manufacturing business, you're definitely in the right place. But it does mean we're going to continue to see more and more pressures from outside the U.S. We go to the next slide. Well, this slide, what you can see here is a report by IHS, which is a large organization that trends GDP and industries associated with it. And what it shows you, and you probably already know, that there is a gradual shift to more globalization. Clearly, China and other countries have become more important in terms of the global GDP. Now, the good news is the absolute value of GDP continues to be larger, and the U.S. still remains to be a very large contributor to global GDP, particularly around the manufacturing space. While we were at low 20%, 22% or so in the day back in the turn of the century, now in today's terms, we're just below that 20% level. It's still very large, and the opportunity is still very, very big. And some industries continue to have better trends than others, as you can see here, but some of the main industries clearly are there. But the long point of this, or the major point of this to note, is that there's global competition. We're going to have to continue to make sure we raise our game to be competitive. Next slide. The good news, though, for this group in particular, as I mentioned briefly earlier, is that in-region, for-region remains extremely important. What you see on this slide from OECD is that the value add in region is critical. And if you look in the United States as an example, origin of manufacturing value add in the final demand is over 70% within the country. What that means is that the majority of the value creation for most of our products that we produce in this country still comes from within the country. And that's important because when you think about that, that means that in region, for region remains important. But if you look further, you also see that this is going to continue to shift and actually become more and more important. I think right now, with all the supply chain disruption that we're dealing with, clearly people are thinking about how they can shorten supply chains, bring things closer to where they're producing, and find ways to have more in region, for region. There's an estimation that over $2 trillion, potentially more, of trade flow shifts could take place to help advance this in region, for region idea. Certainly, Manufacturing 4.0 also changed the game on this. And as we move forward, we'll talk a little bit about how transformation continued to help this happen. Let's go to the next slide, please. This slide really shows you that continued use around technology, R&D, and design continue to be important. And so clearly an advantage for the U.S. as we think about state of manufacturing being important. But it doesn't mean that these other areas aren't important. It just shows you that there's more and more competition in other areas. As we go forward to the next. All in all, though, what I'd like to share with you is that the opportunity is great. As you think about manufacturing 4.0 and the in-region, for-region transformation that I'm talking about, it's estimated that between now and 2030, it's expected that there'll be a $500 billion, 460 billion opportunity coming into the country, into the U.S. By 2030, directly as a result of transformation that's listed here through manufacturing 4.0. So the opportunity is big, and we should all be excited about where this goes. So the state of U.S. manufacturing is strong and continues to be robust, and will continue to be larger and larger as we go forward. Next slide. So let's take a section and talk about our last section today, which is really about the state of future forward transformation of manufacturing and of companies, and really talk about how we create the ecosystem, the capability, and the culture in your company to be successful. And how do you really harness these mega trends to set yourself up for success going forward? It's not just manufacturing, it's about how you line up with these mega trends and how you think about your organization holistically from a ecosystem capability and culture that can set the stage. So let's start the topic and we'll begin to see, let's go deeper into this as we begin to explore how you do this. First and foremost, I'd like to share a little bit of the roadmap as we go forward. We'll begin to capitalize on driving this nearshoring supply chain for resilience. As I talked about a moment ago, it's really important that we think about how you take advantage of this whole resourcing towards the local in-region, for-region. The second aspect is to really think about global leadership and how you really take this Industry 4.0 idea to another level. The third area is really about how do you think about getting your workforce prepared with the specialized skills needed for this. The fourth step is really to embrace a physical and digital ecosystem that I'll talk more about in a moment, and how you really build that in place in your company. Then, how do you leverage lean transformation and the digital transformation at the same time? Oftentimes, these are perceived as mutually exclusive. They are not. And how do you leverage the two together to drive continuous improvement? And last but not least, how do you think about sustainability and how this builds into your business model within the company? Let's take a deeper look now at some of the components here, first and foremost. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, resiliency becomes really the competitive weapon. It's an interesting time right now. I think the discussions we have in our company, and I'm sure in your company as well, as we think about the success of 2021 and even in the future, it's not just about the great idea or the great innovation. That's certainly an important part of it. But being able to fulfill and having a supply chain that's resilient, that can support disruption, like we've seen with the pandemic, becomes really huge to the success factor. I share with our teams that our manufacturing teams, now's the time to think about manufacturing as a competitive weapon. If we can produce, we can fulfill to customer demand, we can outperform our competition, and we can gain market share, and we can grow our company. If our supply chain fails us, we run the risk of having the opposite happen. So we have to be successful. And every company is seeing this. I'm sure each of you is also seeing it. I have a couple personal examples that I'd share with you. I have a daughter, 3 grown kids, and my oldest daughter works in a Ford plant in the Midwest. That plant is closed right now. Why? Because of supply chain disruption. And there's other automotive plants that are going through the same thing. There's also a great article, if you look on the Wall Street Journal, that shows what's happening at the port of Long Beach in California. Normally, there's 3 large container ships waiting to get into the port to deliver materials from Asia into the port in Long Beach. Today, believe it or not, there's 49 large container ships backed up, waiting to get into the harbor to unload their goods. So the whole disruptive environment is really severe and really material. So this has really become the top priority for companies to build this resilience. And how do you do that? People are, polled, look at it from multiple perspectives, but things like dual sourcing, having the right inventory of the critical components, being prepared to do this nearshoring we've been talking about, regionalization, SKU rationalization, being focused on being really good at what you do, and some other areas. But these are really critical steps to think about in your supply chain. But now let's look at some other ways to get this resilience if you go to the next slide. This is just a supporting document. I'll skip this, but this talks a little bit about rethinking the supply chain. This shows you that literally almost could be as much as $4.5 trillion of redirection of supply chain coming into the U.S. and other places is being considered by companies right now. So there's a great tipping point that's happening as a result of all this disruption. which could reset those up. That could be an opportunity or that could be a threat. Hopefully for us in the US, this could be a great opportunity. We go to the next slide. As we think about Industry 4.0 and how we implement this, though, one of the things that clearly has become apparent is the ability for companies to transform using Industry 4.0 and how mature they are at this. If you can be really good at this and you can apply this across multiple use cases or areas within a facility or multiple facilities and scale this across your plant or plants, and the more you're capable and the more you're able to do this, the better you do this, the more resilient you become. And it's pretty simple if you think about it. Being connected gives you great ability to see forward and see backwards. It gives you the ability to have analytics to see what's going on, and it gives you the ability to automate and drive more effectiveness within your facility. Simple example I would give you in our company is we've done this or we've worked to do this. In the old days, we would look forward and we would make a reaction to a market change, and it might take us literally a couple months for the end supplier that supplies us a part to be fully aware of the change in capacity that we needed. So when markets went up, we would be slow to react, and that supply base would be slow to react to us, and we might have constraints in our production. Equally the case, and also very difficult, is when we would see demand drop, and it would be very slow to turn off the supply base or slow it down, and we would have costs and issues, and our suppliers would have costs and issues because of the inability to react quickly. As you go forward, now those moments are measured through minutes and hours and much more on a real-time basis, and it gives us the ability to really scale up or scale down in a much more cost-effective way. The other side of it, though, is also to think a little bit about how we do that through automation. And I think through this maturity of I4O, you also have the ability to think about how you can make work more fulfilling for people, and you can leverage automation to try to take some of the ergonomic areas or some other areas out so that you can get real good value add and you're less affected by ups and downs from a labor perspective. Let's go to the next slide. As we also think about agility and flexibility, another way to think about this, as I'm just talking about, is the ability to scale up and down. But this also means that you have the ability to improve your speed and your cycle time. When you think about the ability to go to market, oftentimes people think about competitive advantage through this cycle reduction if they can deliver quicker and faster. Clearly, you can win in the marketplace with that. But there's also some inherent advantages that come with speed and agility in a production environment. We see significant improvement in quality. We see significant reduction in cost. We see consistency and better performance in our plants, so less rework and less waste. And at the end of the day, we're able to not only create value for our customers and create more value add to the customer, but we also, through this waste removal, we're able to generate profitability that we can reinvest in innovation for growth. So it's a virtuous cycle that we use. And it all comes from this agility and flexibility to be more effective with speed and in cycle time to drive this lever. If we go to the next slide now, we'll talk a little bit about the ecosystem. One of the things that's really critical that I'm sure you've heard about before in the manufacturing 4.0 discussions is the balance between the new ecosystem of physical to digital, digital to digital, and digital to physical. And in the old days, things were done in a very manual way, and you wouldn't see a lot of the digital aspect of this. But when you think about it going forward, the world has changed. And if I take a couple examples to share with you just kind of what this means in layman's terms, again, a business perspective more than a production perspective, physical to digital is enabled through low-cost sensor technology as a good example. You'll see some great stories, success stories, where people can use sensors to really track how things are performing and bring the physical world to a digital world. We see it every day in production environments. We see it in product usage. We see it even in our own personal lives. But then going further is the digital to digital. And this is really where devices bring this analytics to insight. And this is where literally, as you capture information, you can use information flow to get quicker analytics and gain better insight. And that insight then allows you to do problem solving and continuous improvement in a way that's accelerated like never before. And while you may say we're able to get information pretty well and doing it the old way, I would tell you that this is going to be something that's going to really drive this speed and reactivity like we've never seen before. And one of the things that's important is sorting through all the information. There's a massive amount of information. As I tell our teams, data for data's sake isn't of value. It's the insight we collect from that data and sorting through the noise to get to the right pieces of information to take the right decisions to drive improved value. And then last but not least is the ability to take that information and then turn it into the physical. We do this, a good example of this would be through simulation and find ways to do simulating and modeling. You can imagine if you can simulate, you can take test cycles out and you can dramatically improve the ability to reduce cycle times in product development, for example. Now let's go to the next slide and we'll take a quick snapshot. You'll see some technologies that are listed. You'll see 12 innovative technologies that are going to drive Industry 4.0. And we won't spend time on these today, but I'm sure you've got some of these in your locations already. But these are 12 identified technologies that companies that are out there that are in this consulting environment would help all of us to realize are going to change the way we do manufacturing. Now let's turn to the next slide. This is an area that is exciting to me, and this is around lean. As I mentioned at the beginning of the discussion today, there's a lot of thought that it's hard for people to either be a lean shop or an Industry 4.0 shop. I think that's not the case. I think that lean is a very powerful system that drives purpose, people, improvement, and process together to drive a culture of continuous improvement and drive value creation and waste removal for a company. I'm a huge believer of this. But at the same time, I think you can also use a digital environment to enable this in an even faster way. Imagine if you could get the information to be able to leverage at a quicker level. Think of a digital and-on, for example, where you have a problem. If you look at the chart, what you see is some simple examples of where lean and digital can come together. A good example of picking the right part, using a light system and a digital poka-yoke system gives you the ability in a simple way for an employee to be able to pick the right part to assure you have the right part. Or another example is to use a work guidance system to make sure that the product is exactly where it should be when it's being fabricated in an interesting way to make sure that you don't have dimensional problems, which can create huge issues for quality. And last but not least, it can be used for advanced leak testing. We do this today. We look at all of our products that use refrigerants and we do leak checks on the copper systems to make sure they don't leak. And you can do this all through technology that also then allows you to do better problem solving to ensure that you get that perfect quality coming out of the factory. And certainly we all know about use of torque tools and digital technologies to assure that tightening and sequencing is done in a proper way. This technology has been around for a while, but these are all ways that you can use a digital factory and at the same time drive better quality and improve your lean capability. So they're definitely not mutually exclusive, but codependent. If we look then at the last, go to the next slide, I think what I would share with you is the circular economy. Things are changing, and as we look forward, people want to also know that after you've produced a product that you're going to be there to try to help, whether it's to recycle it or resell it or help that customer dispose of it someday. There's a whole market opportunity there that's as well, which is about a $2 trillion opportunity coming up in just a couple of years. And you see this all the time if you look around you. Last but not least, if we go to the next slide, please. I'd share with you that the journey for Future Forward is really exciting. And as you heard in the video and you heard our CEO say, one company can change an industry and an industry can change the world. We truly believe that, and we truly think that if you embrace the mega trends, if you think about the changes that are coming and you see the risks, but you also have a glass half full mindset and see the opportunities, you can create this nexus of opportunity where you can position your company to be successful. But it takes doing things differently. It takes thinking a little bit different about how you might go forward. And it may require different skill sets, different leadership skills, and a different culture and different mindset to be able to do that. But as you do that, the rewards are tremendous, and you have the opportunity truly to be the market leader in your domain. So with that, I thank you for having me today, and glad to open it up for questions, Q&A for the next 5 minutes. Okay, let me see here. All right, so the first question I have is, how can my company develop more agility? I think there's a lot to that question, but I think the first thought that I would give you would be to start with having the leadership team talk about what they need to do to build more agility, and then start to think about how you can go and see others from an innovation perspective that use agile development. I know that standard work and process always sounds like a lot of bureaucracy and things can be slower, but the reality is good standard work can dramatically improve your ability to go fast. We use that in our lean environment every day. We also use agility from a design perspective, from an innovation perspective. We didn't invent that. We went and saw it at other companies, and we saw what those companies were doing, and we adopted some of the agile techniques that they use from technology. High tech industries are really good at this. And when you think about developing cell phones and technology, the speed of innovation is really, really critical. So it's really important. So those are some things to start with, I would think. And certainly talking to others and getting people to help you is also an important part of it. The next question is, how does Train support the development of the workforce of the future? This is a great question. And what I would share with you is it starts with a couple aspects. First is the commitment from leadership to spend time to develop people. I think a lot of companies see training as a cost. We see it as a way to help improve the most valuable resource we have for our company, our people. And I think that mindset is the first step. With that, then you'll see leadership commit to the investments necessary to build a learning system for your organization. With that, then I think really making sure that everybody has the development plans in place, that people have time to do their personal development, and really begin to help people transition. The only other aspect I would share would be in our company, we also spend a lot of time to make sure that people know the skill sets required. So we spend time to make sure that people understand their jobs, and we work with those individuals to really continue to build their development plans to be successful. It's one of those areas where we have some learning, but quite a bit of on-the-job training. And then we have a lot of coaches, and we see leaders responsible to be those coaches, not to delegate it to others, so that they're building that culture of learning within the company. The next question we have is, can you talk more about resiliency as a competitive weapon? I think that's a great question. Obviously, if you think about today's day and age, you have a lot of companies that are trying to have a supply chain to win. And everybody's going to the same suppliers to get their share of the components or materials to build their product, as an example. Having thoughtfulness around those suppliers, having fewer, better suppliers, we call them preferred suppliers, that we know we can have more confidence with, scaling our spend with those bigger suppliers where possible, finding ways to be very connected with leadership of those suppliers, leader to leader level connections. All those kind of things become very important. And then in the end, where necessary, where we have critical components, we want to make sure we have as many dual source opportunities, frankly, though, as necessary if we do have supply disruptions. The other aspect of this is having a really strong SIOP process, which is a sales, inventory, and operations planning process, and really making sure that our teams on the commercial and product management side and the marketing side are very attuned to demand changes as early as possible so that we can be effective with our supply base and our manufacturing base to plan ahead. The more time you have to prepare and to adjust and react, the better you can do that and the better your suppliers can do that. So being thoughtful about this is important. Those are some of the key things that I think you can do. And if you do this better, you can create this competitive advantage because other companies, if they can't supply as well as you can, you have better lead times, you have better fulfillment, and you can do a better job of meeting the customer needs. With that, I want to thank everybody for allowing me to speak today, and I hope you have a great conference. And Donna, I turn it back to you for the next part of the summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. Wow, that was a lot to digest. I put down resilience is the competitive weapon. And for those of you out there, I also made a note that we need the tools and technology to be resilient. Again, we need the tools and technology so that your manufacturing operation can be resilient. So I'm going to run through really quickly so that I can move you throughout the day because I know our fast pitch meeting, one-on-one meetings begin at 12. Again, I want to say many thanks to Ray Pittard for sharing his insights and wisdom. We really appreciate you and Train Technologies. For you out there in the virtual world, our virtual audience, we are off to head out for the rest of the day for 4 activities. Normally, we would be doing this face-to-face, but I'm going to encourage you to stay engaged for these 4 activities. First is our poster walk competition, where you will review the posters of MBEs from around the country. Companies were asked to submit a poster showing how their companies overcame disruption by displaying the problem, the process, and the solution. Take your time and review each poster and vote for the one you like the by clicking the page. It will turn red to register your vote. You can only vote once, and you can unclick the heart if you decide that you want to vote for another poster. I encourage you to review all posters before you cast your vote, and the poster walk competition will be up during the entire summit. The second is our technology showcase. It's in the Knowledge Networking Pod. This is a collection of videos with some of the most amazing technology from Georgia Tech, MBEs, and others. Finally, if you received a confirmation for your fast pitch sessions where you will meet one-on-one with corporations and original equipment manufacturers or OEMs, please click on the Fast Pitch Corporations. Please click on the Fast Pitch Room, at your appointment time. I'd like to recognize our Fast Pitch corporations, some are new and some are returning, for participating in our one-on-one meetings. Thank you to BMW, Brady Health Systems, Hanger, Mohawk Industries, NI, which is formerly known as National Instruments, Oshkosh Corporation, Siemens, the Home Depot, Train Technologies, Vizient, and UPS. So again, make sure you click on the Fast Pitch Room at your appointed time. The final activity before we go to our networking later is at 2 o'clock. We will have our industry sessions. We have 4 sessions, 2 at a time, from 2 to 2:45. We have Supplying Healthcare in a Changing World with Premier, Common Spirit, Grady, Owens & Minor, and Johnson & Johnson. And then the second one we have looking ahead, how to build a collaborative retail partnership. And this is being led by the Home Depot and one of their MBE manufacturing suppliers, MAT Holdings. I would also like to say our healthcare session is powered by the Healthcare Supplier Diversity Alliance. At 2:50, we have Let's Talk Mobility, Transportation, and Manufacturing for Smart Cities, which is really a major hot topic now. And that will be with the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, Siemens Mobility, and BMW. And then finally, at the same time, we will have a glimpse into the future of the food and beverage industry. So for those of you out there in that industry, Wendy White from our Georgia Manufacturing Extension Partnership will conduct that presentation. We do want to note that the Georgia MEP is part of a national network of the Manufacturing Extension Partnership that serves all manufacturers, MBEs or non-MBE manufacturers. We're in partnership with MEPs across the country to work with our manufacturers. Finally, I would say 2 things. One is we'll look for a program book in your email at some point. We will be sending that out. We'll have more details about the summit. Meanwhile, you can find more about the summit at www.manufacturersummit.com. We will meet back at 5 o'clock in our networking pod to begin our networking sessions as we did yesterday, where we will enjoy the music of Grammy Award nominated guitarist Rod Harris, and we will do our breakout rooms like we did yesterday. So we'll see you at 5 o'clock. We have a lot going on: poster walks, technology showcase, your fast pitch at your appointed time, and then, of course, at 2 o'clock, we'll see you for the industry sessions. Thank you again, and thanks again to Ray Pitt.